You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Yeah, that's right. I met Les in 1995 at an independent wrestling show, and kind of recognized him from a TV commercial I had seen where he was advertising his radio show that he did, and introduced myself, and he told me that he was getting ready to open up a wrestling school in Cincinnati, and I expressed my interest in getting into the business, and he told me to stop by for a tryout, and that's kind of where it all began for me.
Now, at that time, did you actually have the Sharkboy idea in mind, or was that just something that was developing and percolating over the years?
Well, actually, when I first broke in, Les's group was in need of a referee, so that was going to be my spot. There weren't a lot of little guys in the business yet, and I say little, smaller than what you normally see on television. The luchadors hadn't really taken Monday Nitro by storm yet. There wasn't, there weren't really a whole lot of smaller guys. So I was supposed to be a referee, and I went in and started training, and the referee training and the wrestler training were pretty similar. So it turned out, I was pretty adept at the wrestling part of it, and I went to Les and I said I would really like to try to wrestle on the shows from this point forward, and he said, well, we need a referee. What are we going to do? And I said, well, what if I was to wear a mask? If I wore a mask, I could referee and wrestle, and that way I would be able to do both. And that's kind of where the whole masked wrestler thing came about for me. Was just simply because I'd started as a ref and sort of needed to conceal my identity when it came to actually wrestling, and the masked character is sort of the the beginnings of the Sharkboy thing.
All right. Well, was there any conscientious choice? Like, were you a big fan of sharks growing up then, or was it just that was the mask that looked cool to you and that's the way it went?
Well, I'll be honest, I was just like any wrestler just starting out. I didn't have any money. Went to a store here in Ohio that's actually the people make wrestling gear. They sell it out of their home, and there was a really unique outfit that was sort of on the discount shelf. It was blue and purple. It just looked really aquatic to me. And I took the outfit, and then I heard this song shortly thereafter called I Come From the Water by a band called the Toadies. And this was in 1997. I heard the song. I had the outfit. I thought, well, it'd be really cool to be like a underwater superhero, sort of, that rises from the water and fights the wrestling bad guys. And that was sort of the beginnings of Sharkboy right there.
Awesome. Now, it's my understanding that you actually own and trademarked the name Sharkboy long before that motion picture came out, Sharkboy and Lava Girl. What was the deal with that? Did they have to pay you for using your name, or what happened with that?
Well, I began the process of trademarking the name in 1999 when I found out I was going to sign with WCW. I wanted to own the name and not just turn it over to the people at Turner. So I started the process and got the trademark in 2000, and I guess that's right, 99 and 2000, yeah. And the movie came out in 2005. I already had the name trademarked for 5 years, so I filed a lawsuit, and we wound up settling out of court.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's a disclosure agreement on that, so we won't go into too much detail. In fact,
yeah, the less I talk about it, the better.
That's fine. And in fact, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I want to give my co-host a chance to ask a few questions. So, Peter, I'm going to throw it to you, and then I'll come back whenever you're ready.
One question I have is, what was it like wrestling at the Brian Pillman Memorial Show?
I mean, that was an amazing thing. Those were some of the biggest shows I had done up to that time, without a doubt. The very first one we did, the WW, I think it might have been the WWF at the time, WCW and ECW all came together to raise money for the Pillman family, and that was unheard of. No, those groups hadn't worked together at all up to that point, to the best of my knowledge, especially not all three, on the same show. So just to be a part of a show that was sort of that big, from a wrestling industry standpoint, was really amazing. And we wound up doing 4 of them, and I was actually on all 4 of them. And so that was a great opportunity. It sort of put me on the map in the independent scene, and really led to my being signed with WCW in 1999.
Very cool. Now, I always ask this question with pro wrestlers. it's a two-part question. First part is, are you a fan of mixed martial arts? And if so, if MMA was as huge as it is now, would you have still chosen pro wrestling, or would you have taken a career in UFC?
I am a fan of MMA. I watch the UFC. Sometimes watch the smaller groups, usually just the UFC fights, and it is entertaining. It's actually something that my brother sort of turned me on to years ago when they were in the original, when they did the original shows. I probably watched UFC 4 or 5 or something like that. I can remember watching, the single, one of the single digits anyway, and became a fan of it. And it's really sort of morphed into this more of a sports now. It was sort of a no holds barred, no weight classes kind of thing in the beginning, and now it's much more of a sport. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for what those guys do. I'm not sure I could have done that. I have an amateur wrestling background, but I don't have any kind of striking experience. I wasn't a kickboxer, Muay Thai guy, or anything like that. So, you really have to be well-rounded and versatile to do well in that sport. Do I think I would have tried it? Possibly, but I kind of doubt it, man. I just think I have more of a flair for entertainment, and pro wrestling brings a little more entertainment to the table than does MMA. So I think I probably would have pursued pro wrestling anyway, even if the UFC had been that popular back then.
Now, I know myself and Steve were both big hockey fans. Are you a hockey fan, or any other sport in particular? Football, baseball, anything like that?
I like hockey. Growing up in Ohio, we didn't have a whole heck of a lot of choice in terms of live hockey. You go watch college hockey, some of the college hockey teams around here. At some point, we had a team. We wound up getting a team called the Cincinnati Cyclones that I went and I watched them a lot. It's a lot of fun going to the Cyclones games. But they only made it to the level they were at was the IHL, not the NHL. So sort of a minor league hockey team. And now, of course, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. I have yet to see one of their games, but yeah, I like hockey. I guess if I had to pick a team, it would probably be the New Jersey Devils. The Cyclones were sort of the feeder team for the Devils at one point, so it was interesting and exciting to see some of the Cyclones players, move up to the NHL and play for the Devils. It was a lot of fun to watch them for a while. Probably I'm the biggest fan of football, I would say. I watch a ton of football, Bengals fan all the way. I also like the Cincinnati Reds. I probably watched 100 Reds games last year on TV and a couple of them live. So, yeah, baseball and football, without a doubt, I'm a big fan of those sports too.
All right. Well, I believe Peter wanted me to jump back in, so I'll take it back to pro wrestling again here. And I was always wondering, and maybe you can clear this up for me, did the time that you were in WCW lead you to getting into TNA? Did you make a connection with the Jarretts there, or was it just a coincidence that you ended up in TNA after your time in WCW?
I did meet Jeff there in WCW, and that certainly helped. It wasn't like he had no idea who I was when I pursued a spot with TNA. He knew who I was. We had met. More importantly, though, I think I of course was befriended by Chris Kanyon, who actually got me my spot in WCW, got me the tryout with the company, and he was friends with Jeremy Borash, who of course had a lot to do with the very beginnings of TNA, and is still very much involved with the company, and is a huge part of the company. So I would say my friendship with Kanyon, meeting Jeremy Borash was an even bigger thing that had to do with my landing a spot with TNA. But meeting Jeff certainly didn't hurt, and Jeremy and Jeff introduced me to Jerry Jarrett, of course, and it was kind of shortly thereafter that I was offered a contract with TNA.
Now, when I first started watching TNA back in late 2002 or early 2003, I remember seeing you there from very early on. So I was wondering if you could compare for us the experience being in front of the Nashville Asylum fans to what it was like being in front of the fans in Orlando. What was the difference for you?
I think the difference for me was I think the crowds were entertained probably by different things. I want to say that the crowd in Nashville was maybe a more old school wrestling kind of crowd. Might have bought into the good guys and bad guys a bit easier than the Orlando crowd. At some point, though, I think both crowds sort of became spoiled. We were giving them a show every week, and at one point, I can remember in Nashville anyway, it was sort of, what are we going to do to top last week? If a guy goes through one table, he's got to go through 2 tables this week and stuff like that. So it got a little harder to entertain the crowd in Nashville. And then we went to Orlando, sort of ran into some of the same kind of problems. I think they've sort of leveled off a little bit now and are spacing out some of the crazier bumps and the crazier types of matches and things. And so the crowd in Orlando is, they're very educated, but I don't know that I would use the word spoiled at this point. I think that TNA is doing what they've always done, and that's continue to try to find a groove and to entertain not only the live audience but also the worldwide television audience, and step it up even more for the pay-per-views. So I'm sure there were differences in the crowd, but I think that as a company and as performers, it's our job to figure out what the crowd wants and give it to them.